Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of the Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee, who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much, and we certainly could not do it without you. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon. And he is responsible for the intro that you just heard. It's his voice, it's his music. So we're really grateful for him. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music. And you can find it anywhere that good music can be found, all of your favorite platforms. So check him out. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and the logos here at the Outer Realm. So check him out on Facebook and Instagram, see what he's got going on. Big thank you to him. So also, remember people, we love you. Anyway, Outer Realm has been nominated for a third year in a row for the People's Choice Podcast Awards. And the category is Best Female Hosts. I know, who knew? Anyway, we'll take it. We're just really honored to be nominated in the sport of, of not having to win. And came close year one, made it to the finals, and hey, we're just happy for the nomination. So just, watch over the network over the course of the next month or so. You're going to start seeing a lot more stuff on that because there's usually a few shows that get nominated. So we're really grateful. Now, tonight, the Outer Realm welcomes the return of one of our favorite people, and we consider him a dear friend, Elliott Van Dusen, who's going to be catching us up on what he's been up to within the field, of course, of the paranormal and parapsychology, including big news on the Halifax Paranormal Symposium, which will be coming to you all October 7th of this year. So, yeah, right?
Amazing. I love it.
I know. Long ways from Canada. Sure is.
It is.
But
we
welcome.
are in Canada.
Glad to be back. Look at you.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He's going to be on Fika with Vicky tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, how cool is that?
Talking about the Vampire Tales. Yep.
Awesome.
I know. So
awesome. Hey. Great book. If you haven't read it. Hi, Cindy.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. As we're taking this little bow. So yeah, thank you. So anyway, so we're just waiting on Elliott to come in. We're really excited to have him back on. He's definitely well versed in his field, and from what I understand, he's got another book coming out. So it's just kind of cool.
Oh, happy birthday, William.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday. Look at that.
Oh, hi, Jen. Jen and Cindy are friends of mine.
Jen's also
Where
listening.
Are you guys right now, by the way?
Perfect.
I just see golf pictures all the time.
All right. Oh, and I guess who just chimed in. Okay, Elliott, you ready? Just nod. Yeah, I'm ready. Ready? Yeah. Good. Good.
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good, thank you.
Kicking around, doing okay. It's just middle of the week, so it's just kind of good.
Hump day.
Awesome.
I know. So welcome. This is a really big deal. I mean, we always love having you on, but this is a really big deal. The Halifax Paranormal Symposium.
Yes, it's going well. It's going well. As you guys stated, it's going to be held in Halifax, Nova Scotia, at the Halifax Tower Hotel and Conference Center, and that's in Bayers Lake.
Right.
It's a fairly new hotel. I think they've been only open for maybe a year and a half, going on 2 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's going to be Saturday, October 7th, full day event from 9 9 a.m. Sorry, until 6 p.m.
Okay.
Might have something else going on after that. We're looking at possibly doing a small group at a haunted location and kind of do
Oh,
a paranormal investigation kind of thing. It would only be a small group though,
Right.
so it's more intimate setting, and then you can kind of talk to some of the investigators and things like that. So I'm still trying to line something up for that.
Right.
But other than that, the event will be great. It'll have vendors. We're in the process right now of screening our vendors. So if anyone is interested in attending, whether you do, you know, divination type work, sell paranormal related books, or you have anything that you think would kind of jive with our symposium, we still have room for vendor tables, and you can apply at ppri.net/vendors, and we will review your application. Applications close April 30th, and
Oh,
we will
wow.
let
We're
everybody know
close.
on May 1st. Yes, yeah, we're
Wow.
close to the
We're
vendors.
really just got under the radar there. That's great. So people
Very,
still
very
do have
close.
time.
Very close on the vendors. Still looking for some sponsors as well. We do have the Haunted Walk, which is in Ontario. You guys are probably familiar with that company.
Yes. Yes.
They made a donation to our cause, and of course, the main event or the main sponsor right now is my organization, Paranormal Phenomena Research and Investigation, and Ghost Project
Oh,
Canada.
you should message me on that. Maybe
I
the Outer
will.
Realm will give you a sponsor.
I will. I will definitely do that. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we've got 5 guest speakers. So this is our inaugural event as well. So this is something
Okay.
I've wanted to organize for a long time. We, my partner Daryl Walsh and I talked about
I'm gonna bring them up.
doing this probably before COVID, but then when COVID hit, we had to kind of delay everything.
There you go.
So
no, that's a great show.
this will be our inaugural event, and we're hoping to make it a repeat annual event, and hopefully if this year goes successful, we're hoping to do a 2-day event next year. So
Oh, that would be wonderful. I mean, it's a great lineup. I mean, Chris has been on the show 2 or 3 times, and
Oh,
he's
he's so
oh
interesting.
yeah, he's amazing. And you know, I mean,
Yeah.
Richard, come on, there's a highlight right there. They're all great speakers.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's gonna
and
be
we're
a really
getting
fun.
we're getting a lot of interest in people that are interested in the different guest speakers as well. Like Lauren Coleman has had a lot of people
Yes.
comment saying that you know, one person commented that the price of admission is worth it just to speak to Lauren
Just
Coleman. Um,
right,
I
right.
did I did a post today. I guess he was written into a Scooby Doo comic book, and he now has his
Awesome.
own action figure. Um,
Really?
yes, yes, it's on our social media. So I mean, Lauren will be a great person to talk to as well. He's into cryptozoology, so anyone that's
I
Right,
not
love
familiar
that.
with
right.
cryptozoology, it's the you know, the animals and the creatures that people report
Yeah.
that
High
science hasn't
strangeness,
proven.
right?
Yeah, your
Yes.
Bigfoots, your megalodons, all those kind of creatures. So
I
Yeah.
love it.
And
Well,
sometimes Mothman falls into that. Sometimes he doesn't, right?
yeah, Mothman. There's tons. I mean, Mothman, Yeti.
I love
Um,
Mothman.
yeah,
Yeah.
all your
Yeah.
lake monsters, things like that.
Well, can you walk us through a little bit about each of your guests, just to give people an idea what to expect?
Yes, for sure. So Kim Moser, I'm really excited to have her. Because she is the host and producer of an Eastlink cable television show called Haunted. And she kind of got involved in the paranormal because of Helen Creighton. And for those who don't know Helen Creighton, she was kind of like your first paranormal investigator in Nova Scotia. She was a
Right.
folklorist, and she wanted to go
Nice.
around and collect all the different stories that the older generation had, and she wanted to capture and document that before they passed on, so that there'd be some sort of record of these amazing ghost stories and folklore
Oh,
type
that's
stories.
fantastic.
And so that's
Yeah.
kind of what caught Kim's attention into it. And
Right.
she again went on to do her TV series, which she's still doing. So I'm really excited to have her. She's done a lot of paranormal investigations. She's been to you know, like the real Conjuring house. She's been inside there. She's been in the Lizzie Borden Airbnb house. She's been in the witch house in Salem. all kinds of different spots all over Canada and the
Mm.
United States. So she'll
Right.
be
Yeah.
she'll be really, really good guest speaker, and she'll also bring, you know, the woman female perspective as well, because it is different, you know, in that field. You see a lot of
It
the
is.
experts are males. There's
Mhm.
a lot of females trying to break into that kind of field. So I'm really excited to have Kim there. I think she'll be a great guest speaker.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Daryl Walsh, obviously he's my partner in crime for the paranormal. He was my
Right.
mentor. I met him back in 2000 when I started taking parapsychology courses at the Nova Scotia Community College, and we've been friends and colleagues ever since.
Right.
Daryl's just coming off of doing the TV show Sightseers, which was on the AMI network.
Right.
He was their paranormal analyst there. He was kind of played like a skeptical kind of role there. But Daryl is very skeptical and sarcastic for anyone that's listened to our podcast, the
Very
Dueling
nice.
Parapsychologists podcast. We usually
Sounds,
Right.
sounds
take
like your
jabs at each
partner.
other. Oh, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's good.
No,
It's good.
no, I meaning Michelle, meaning me.
Yeah.
Oh,
She
yes.
sounds
Oh,
The
just like me.
compadre.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Very
It's great. It's
skeptical.
great to work in a team, and you know, it brings comedy and stuff like that too. So,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
Daryl's written Ghosts of Nova Scotia, Ghost Waters,
Nice.
Canada's Haunted Sea and Shore. So he's got a lot of experience with your local ghost stories for Atlantic Canada. He also did his theses when he did his PhD in parapsychology on near-death experiences. He has a
Mm.
fascination with NDEs. So if anybody wants to attend the symposium that's had an NDE or has questions about NDEs, he'd be the guy you'd want to talk to.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, Chris Stiles, he's also from Nova Scotia. He's a
Mm.
ufologist. He's
Right.
most known for the Shag Harbor UFO incident. Him
Yes.
and Don Ledger dug up a lot of Canadian documents, government documents that showed that there was a crash, that there was an unknown object, and that you know, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Navy, the Americans were all searching the ocean for that object. But he's got another story that he's just been, I think he spoke about it at the Shag Harbor Expo last year, and it kind of relates to Shag Harbor. So with the Shag Harbor story, October 4th, 1967, there was a UFO crash off Nova Scotia. The second part of that story is that once they couldn't find the object and the search kind of cleared, is that there was rumors and stories that the object had moved down the coast of Nova Scotia and ended up somewhere around Shelburne, where a second object came down to help repair it, and then the two objects took off. Well, Chris Stiles has thinks he solved this kind of mystery. So he did a lot of digging. He goes around. He literally can sometimes knock on people's doors and ask them, you know, if they have any information about this. And he was able to locate a few witnesses to this, what
Fantastic.
we're calling the Shelburne incident now, because
Right.
from what he's been able to gather, including some government documents, is that there was an incident in 1960, so 7 years before Shag Harbor, that
Wow.
involved two unidentified submerged objects under the water that were being monitored by government. There was all kinds of agencies involved, because they, in the government documents that Chris was able to get his hands on, it said that they were doing a NATO exercise with some of our partners. But he's
Wow.
talked to divers that said that they actually were filming this second UFO repairing the first UFO. So he's going to be really, really interesting to listen to, I think, at our symposium.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think
They're
he
all
touched a
great
little bit on that when he was on the show. I think it was like last year. Like it was quite a while back.
Yeah.
And he said he was just going to start delving into some of that. So sounds to me like he went neck deep in it. You guys are going to
Yes.
get to hear all the good juicy stuff. So
Yes, he's
fantastic.
definitely made some headway on it, and I know he's working on a book about it as well. So
Oh,
hopefully that'll
wow,
be out.
fantastic.
That'll be out hopefully for the symposium, and it'll be available for sale if it is.
Oh, that's fantastic. We'll have to bring some of your people on the show, maybe just to start getting them gearing towards your symposium,
Oh,
and
they
maybe
would
just getting
love that for
people.
sure.
Yeah. Well, we
Oh,
still have openings.
oh, well,
I'll
between
definitely
now and
let them know.
October for sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, we'll connect up. I mean, I could get a hold of Chris anytime, but let's connect up with your other guests, and then we'll just make it a whole, series about your symposium.
That's awesome. I'll definitely do that.
All right.
Dr. Richard Gallagher is one that I am dying to listen to.
Me too.
I'll get his book when he comes to the symposium, but I don't want to
Right.
read it. I want to hear from him directly. But
Yes.
he's a psychiatrist. He teaches at New York Medical College, and he also teaches at Columbia University. So very highly educated, respected person in his field. But
Mhm.
Dr. Gallagher believes that there are some rare cases where it's not mental illness that's affecting a person, that it could possibly be demonic possession. And that's, of course, after the person has gone through a full battery of medical exams and psychological exams, and he can't diagnose them with anything that's in the DSM-5.
Right.
So I'm very, very excited to hear Richard Gallagher speak. Apparently, one of his big cases, which he nicknames Julia, that's the name of the possessed person that dealt with, is that good of a story that Jason Blum from Blumhouse Productions, that does all the horror movies, is in talks with him about making a horror movie about his case. So
His case,
uh,
I think it would be wonderful.
yeah,
I
so
love the perspective because isn't he like a psychologist or psychiatrist to exorcists as well?
yes, yeah. So he
Okay.
does help with the church and the exorcisms, and he helps
Oh,
kind of
okay.
do the
That's what I
medical
thought.
examinations of somebody that they suspect may
So
be
well trusted
denomically
and
possessed.
well revered, basically, for his expertise.
Yes, yeah, and of course, you know how it is when you're in that field. He probably has some colleagues that like to razz him about his opinions and beliefs, but he's very
Mm,
upfront about it. And I've heard him speak on other podcasts and things like that. And he said he doesn't care what his colleagues think.
right.
He's very well educated, very smart man, and he knows what he knows. So I'm very excited to have him.
Well, that's
And
why
then
he's
Yeah.
so smart because he's not standing with everybody else.
oh,
Yeah.
exactly. And then our last guest speaker is Lauren Coleman. Very excited. Daryl's especially excited to speak with him because Daryl also, besides NDEs, has interest in cryptozoology, especially Bigfoot. And
Oh,
Lauren Coleman is very well known in the cryptozoology field.
yes,
Like
yeah.
I said, he was just written into a Scooby Doo comic. He's got his own action figure. He runs the International Cryptozoology Museum in Maine, which
Mhm.
is really neat. It's the only one that I'm aware of in the world. But he's got some artifacts there. People have sent him things like casts of Bigfoot, or what they
Mm,
think is Bigfoot footprints and things like that.
mm.
And he's going to try and tailor his presentation towards creatures that have been reported around the maritime provinces, such as the
Very
the
nice.
Wendigo. The Wendigo
Mm, yeah,
um,
that's a
will
Canada
be.
one. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I've heard the stories of it being reported out in
Mm,
Saskatchewan and things like that. So it'll be
everywhere.
interesting
Oh,
to
yeah.
hear his take on that.
Yes.
Obviously, he knows a lot about Bigfoot, so anyone that's a Bigfoot fan, I want to
Yes.
ask him his thoughts on the megalodon, because I know on TikTok right now you seem to
Oh,
be
it's
seeing a lot of
huge,
videos, yeah, talking
right?
about
Yeah, it's huge right now.
yeah, proof of
Yeah.
the megalodon. So I want to ask him, what his experience, and if he's got any sort of inside information on that, because I think that's really cool. I love great white sharks myself, so
Yes.
I find it fascinating.
Yes. 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 Well, it sounds to me like you've got a really nice blend of everything. You
And that's
know,
what we
you,
tried to do. I want to have kind of a theme every year. So this year's theme was real case files, real investigations, or real studies or experiences. So it kind of
mm,
opened up 3 or 4 different kind of themes, but
mhm.
it's really good. You've got, like you said, a mix of different guest speakers, and
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be interesting. I wish we could have did 2 days, but just where it's our first inaugural event, we don't want to bite off more than we can chew, and you got to learn to walk before you can run. So
I agree. I agree. But I think it's a great idea, though, with the small investigation. I mean, you guys have some great areas out there. You can even get into a whole like, okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to go in and maybe give a shot at a C5 or something. I mean, there's a whole lot you can do out there because there's a mix of pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
A ton of ocean.
Yeah, and I think it would be cool, to bring out the equipment that ghost hunters use, such as your electromagnetic field radiation detectors, things like that, and
mm,
just have a small, intimate group that they can ask questions about the equipment. Even we'll show them how to use the equipment. They can use the equipment themselves, and
right, right.
you never know. Maybe we'll see or experience
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. So aside from putting together this, like, because I mean, people don't realize how much work is involved putting something like this together. It's not like you're just calling up a few people and say, "Hey, we're doing this thing." Like, there's a lot involved in it. So
Yeah.
aside from all this, what have you been up to? Are you still investigating? Are you still
Uh,
working on anything specific?
it's definitely tough, like you said, to organize an event like this. Obviously, takes up the majority of my time this year. Um, Besides that, I'm still trying to do at least 1 to 2 episodes of the Dueling Parapsychologist podcast,
Right.
which is interesting. We have a guest speaker coming up next week. It's about the Bothell Hell House from Washington. A guy
Oh.
named Keith Linder and his wife used to live in this house. It was extremely haunted. Um, all kinds of activity happened. He had multiple different paranormal organizations, including somebody from the Australian Parapsychological Association, come and investigate. So,
No
um,
way.
yeah, it sounds really really interesting. He had reached out to us on Twitter. I did some background check. Obviously, there's mixed opinions because there's so much activity. I wasn't involved with it myself, so I'm going to be interested. I've got my skeptical partner Daryl that's all over people, so it'll be interesting when he's grilling Keith on the show. And then, of course, me with my law enforcement background. I served with the RCMP for 15 years, so it'll be interesting to sit down and talk to him, find out what his experiences were. Apparently, it was so bad that him and his wife are now divorced, and they don't live in the house anymore. And so it'll be interesting to hear his experiences on that. So we do have that coming up. And
Mm.
on top of all this stuff, I'm trying to write my fourth book. My fourth book's title is called Hauntings and Homicides, because I had written my first book, Evil in Exeter, in 2019. And then in 2020, I had written Supernatural Encounters, True Paranormal Accounts from Law Enforcement. And how
Mhm.
that one came about, as I always say, my mother encouraged me to write a second book. I told her, the first book I wrote was about a specific investigation. Those type of investigations don't come along every day. Um, so thanks, Brian.
Yes,
So
Brian's on next week.
I love Brian.
Yeah, me too.
It's next Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll
Wednesday.
be that'll be a great show.
Yeah.
So I thought about what I could write a second book about. So I took my two passions, which was law enforcement and the paranormal, and I started reaching out to people I worked with to see if they had any experiences. And before I knew
Right.
it, I had about 50 stories from law enforcement that were all true. So I had published that book, and then after my second book came out, I actually had a lot of law enforcement people contact me with more
Mm.
stories, and they had seen me on podcasts and had read my book. So before I knew it, I had a third book coming out, which was another 50, 60 stories about law enforcement experience with the paranormal.
Wow.
And took a couple years off from writing just to kind of focus on my organization and some investigations and things like that. And
Mhm.
then I had the idea of, it's really like in parapsychology, when there's a haunting, a lot of times, if it's a intelligent haunting and not so much a residual haunting, although some residual hauntings can be caused from murders. I do have a story about that in my third book.
Mhm.
Um, I thought it would be cool to do a book on hauntings and homicides, because it's such a highly charged environment when the homicide's taking place. And then
Mhm.
a lot of people report later on that there's a haunting there, that there was a murder here, or there was a suicide here, that some sort of death has occurred, and now the place is haunted. So I'm
I worked a case just like that. The spirit told ended up coming forward and telling who killed her.
And
Yeah.
there's been some great stories too, where the spirit's able to provide a medium with some corroborating evidence
That's what happened
as
here.
well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm doing some research on that. If anyone in the law enforcement community out there has any sort of stories, please get in touch with me. I'd love to sit down and interview you, or even just the general public. If you're aware of a location that's had a murder
Mm.
and that's now haunted, send me an email at info@ppri.net, and definitely check it out. I think it'll be really cool because you'll kind of get my parapsychological training perspective, but you'll also kind of get my law enforcement perspective because I also worked homicide. I was on homicide for 8 years, and
Wow.
that's kind of why I became a police officer. I saw the show Unsolved Mysteries. I used to love their cold cases. I knew that I
Yeah.
wanted to be a police officer because it runs in my family. I've got aunts and uncles and cousins that are police officers. But I didn't just want to be a police officer. I wanted to be a homicide detective. So I worked really hard, and I was on major crimes for 8 years and experienced quite a bit. So I think it'll be really cool to tie in my parapsychological education along with my practical homicide experience into this book. So
It's a
that's
great
Absolutely.
combination. It's a very interesting one to approach paranormal with both, criminal profiling and with the parapsychology, or for a medium with their gifts. It's quite interesting. It
yeah.
changes the way you look at cases.
Yes, for sure. And sometimes the
Yeah.
police do work with mediums. I know you guys
Yeah.
have in the past. And even when I was in homicide, there was a cold case that I was reviewing up in Yellowknife, and they would look at different tips that would come in, and some of them would be from mediums, and they would follow up on them. Now, some of the cases didn't end up going anywhere based on that information, but it's still documented, reported in the file.
Mm.
And then other times, there was a psychic in New York named Dorothy Allison. She's deceased now, but
Yes.
she
Yes.
worked a really interesting case about a missing girl, and she
Mhm.
had told the New York Police Department that she sees an oil drum and the number 222, and at the time it didn't make any sense to these guys, but when they found the missing person, she was deceased, put into an oil drum, and right next to the oil drum there was a rock with the number 222 spray painted on it. So at the time when she provided that information to the police, it didn't make any sense, but it was
No.
documented properly, and then later on it
Right.
actually turned out to be quite accurate. So
Yeah, because you can't ignore any of that because you don't know, especially if you don't know the psychic that is contacting the police. They always have to write everything down, right? Just in case. And then often they're questioned as well to make sure that there's no connection to that crime
well,
from
it's
them.
funny.
That's the hard part when you're in a medium. It's like it's hard to trust the law enforcement for a medium as well.
Well, it's true, and I will say, like, law enforcement are very skeptical. So when you have somebody coming forward with like all this really detailed information, and then the police are able to corroborate it, I've heard lots of stories where now all of a sudden the police think that you're involved because you're providing them with such specific information that only the killer or the deceased person would have known. And I actually had a story in my last book. He was a retired police officer in Florida that's got the ability, and he was helping a family locate their missing son in California, and he provided the police with all the detail. He was able to get like almost like the geographical area from the spirit of the deceased guy, and he sent the police to that area. They ended up finding his truck, finding his body, and then next question was, when's the last time you were in California? And they started grilling him, and he said, actually, I've never been on the West Coast. I've never been to California. He explained to him, I did 30 plus years with the Salem Police Department in Massachusetts. I live in Florida. I'm a medium now, and it all panned out. But again, like you said, you're
Mm.
coming forward to provide information to be helpful, and then next thing you know, the police are kind of looking at you like, are you a suspect?
Yeah.
That it's their job and they have to, but it's as a medium and speaking to other mediums who have incredible abilities that are really great at assisting in crime solving. Not a medium doesn't always solve the crime. It's probably this much, but they add so much to the puzzle that it helps, and the detectives together, it's a team effort. um they're very frightened of coming forward because of what's happened. I know with me, I don't go into a police station and say, I either have a connection, a contact, or I don't get involved. I always feel that if it's meant to be, you'll be contacted somehow to assist. Like there's something on the other side, so to speak, that is manipulating everything and making sure you're there for that. I also was part of I remember working with Bobby Brown. I contacted him once, and I won't go into details about the case because it was a high profile case, but it hadn't happened yet. I had the same kind of experience, and those are frightening as a medium. They're extremely frightening because
It's premonition too.
it's premonition. It's scary. It's you don't, it's hard to learn to trust yourself. Right. And I don't know if you've had that experience, but days later, this child showed up on the shores. And I won't say where because it's too easy to Google and I can't talk about it. But it happened days later. And I got that call from him saying, holy crap.
Wow.
And the same thing, like knowing who did it because it was all given. It's hard.
That's an interesting one as well because you're providing information about a future crime as well. So
yeah, that's really tough. And then I've had other ones where the victim has come to me when it's happened and it hasn't even hit the news and they haven't been found or anything like her. I think that we need to help encourage, and you do that by being out there. You help encourage mediums to come forward and help. It's a big deal. Like you're helping to find people and to help bring closure to families. It's important to have someone you can trust and assist that way.
For sure. I have a friend over in England, and she does remote viewing, and she kept getting visions of a missing person. I think I think it was a gentleman over there, and she contacted me and she asked me because she knows I used to be a police officer. She said, "What should I do? Like, I kind of feel like I should be like contacting the police, but I also don't want them to think like I'm some sort of wingnut calling them with information or whatever." And I said, "You know what?" I said, just call them, tell them who you are, give them the information. I said, if they do their job properly, they will document it and they will follow up if there's anything to follow up on it. And it may turn out to be something, it may not. And that's what she did. And she ended up getting a couple calls back from the detective and the investigative team to ask her further questions to kind of see if they could, do whatever they were doing, like looking for more information or kind of if she could lead them maybe in another kind of direction. So they were obviously interested in her information to be calling her back and asking for further details. So in that case, it was obviously helpful and the police were taking her seriously. So
that's great. That is so good. I love hearing stories like that, because more often than not, psychics and mediums are contacted, either by the victim's family or police when it's too late.
Yes. Yeah. And the one other interesting thing too, talking with the guy from Florida that I had interviewed was he said he always feels bad for the family when he's getting information directly from like the deceased person, because then he knows that the person is deceased and has moved on. Especially in missing person cases where the family doesn't have that concrete evidence of a body.
Yes.
So he's always very careful, and he just says like it's very, very stressful. I can't imagine. I don't have that ability. You guys would be more familiar with that for sure. I can only imagine that it would be stressful to know what the family doesn't know. It's
stressful, and also sometimes you don't want to give that information. I mean, look what happened to Sylvia Brown. That one's tough.
Very bad thing.
That was a very bad thing. And it happened twice. Like it happened one after the other that year, which was horrible.
I just sat there going, I got that one. What's wrong with you?
I know I would never say something like that, but I can understand how, I just don't understand why she said it, but I can understand how she got it, because they were weak. They were being held captive. So they were weak, and that you do pick up on that low energy, but you need to explain it as there's low energy. I'm not sure if they are alive. I can't tell you for sure. You never come out and say the way she said it. I can't imagine. I watched that happen live on TV. I was folding laundry when this happened, and I was just like,
No, for
Did
sure.
she
The way
seriously
you
do that?
"Are
just
you
worded it,
crazy?" was all that was coming out of my mouth. Are you nuts?
the way you just worded it is a better way to word it, because you're not saying one way or the other. You're just saying, look, this is the perception that I'm receiving, and I'm just telling
Yes.
you that. You're not
Yeah.
saying whether someone's alive or
But
dead
that's
or
the key word, Elliott, perception.
yes,
You have to
absolutely.
be careful because some energy, if they're being tortured or they're being held captive, that energy reads as near death. So you have to be careful. I think she just had a cocky moment.
Yeah, her stock plummeted after that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just-
Wow.
yeah. Yeah. I think people just on average have to be careful, even in these paranormal investigations. You can't just go in there and start just flapping around and saying what you want to say. It's, myself, I've always worked with doctors and psychologists. It's always something that I've made a prerequisite dealing with somebody's like, you have to explore mental health all the time. And I would always say, I'd like an assessment by not one, but two doctors. And then I need permission by your doctors or psychologists, psychiatrists to work with you. And they always gave it to me, providing they just didn't go off medication. And when the medication didn't work, then, then they were like, okay. I've actually had psychologists say, no, I completely think that it's something otherworldly, so to speak. And at which point then we start working with religious belief systems and things like that.
Yeah, and that's important. That's part of our screening process too, with paranormal phenomena research investigation. We ask about people's medical history, and we explain to them that we're not being nosy and everything's confidential, obviously. But
hard questions,
it's important because some, like, I actually had a case where a person was diagnosed with something that would have explained the phenomena that they were seeing. It became a very complex case. So I actually reached out to Dr. Jim Horan and his partner Brian Lathy, because Jim is considered a clinical parapsychologist, which is somebody that's able to practice psychology or psychiatry, depending on what you are. And he was also a parapsychologist, so we had the background for that paranormal information. Whereas if you just pick the psychologist or a psychiatrist out of the phone book, they may not necessarily have any idea about the paranormal. Whereas Jim would be open to it, but also able to work with the person with their mental health conditions as well. And actually, he wrote an article in one of the scientific journals there. The name of it escapes me, but he used our case as an example in that journal article. So it's very important to cover off the medical.
It's amazing though, that just to be open-minded about it. I think more and more, I read an article recently where many psychologists, more so than the psychiatrists, I think, were a little bit more open-minded. Some of them, even as mediums who went into psychology as a field, offered a whole other perspective to working with people with a belief system that they're, they would lean towards the fact just through their abilities. It's like, okay, we know there's something here. So they were a little bit more open-minded in working with people, because it really is, you really do play counselor. You do really have to know how to speak to people. You really do. You can't just start going, hey, ba, 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 ba. No.
And that's actually a really good point, because there could be a lot of dangerous situations out there when you get amateur paranormal investigators out there that don't have any experience, and some of them go in there and they say, oh yeah, your house is haunted and you got a demon and we're running around with our gadgets and collecting data, and then they just kind of disappear. And sometimes they make things worse. They stir activity up, or
many times.
A lot of times people come in and they do their investigation, they take their photos and collect their data, but they don't actually help the client.
No, I took a counseling course just not to be a counselor, but just so I could see the signs, the body language, to learn how to properly speak to people, to not say something that would make it worse.
Absolutely. You have to be careful with that
Due
regard,
diligence.
for sure. And when you don't know, or it's outside your expertise, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody. The paranormal community is still kind of, from what I understand, I mostly
Say it.
it just seems like they're very competitive, very closed off. They're kind of nasty to each other, like they don't share information and things like that. But
Yeah.
I kind of run in like the academic circle, so I don't really experience that. But from what I'm reading on TikTok and Facebook and listening
It's
to guys
brutal.
that are on the ground, it seems like it's really, really brutal. But there is
There's too many couch investigators too,
There's
though.
a lot
And I
of
don't
fake
mean that
crap on
disrespectfully.
TikTok too.
Sometimes it's all people have, so I don't want to be
oh
disrespectful about that. But they watch something on TV and that's how they base their investigations on. I always have to clarify. I don't run around screaming demon. Like I'm the most logical person I know. Out of 5 answers, they take the D word all the time. But just because you see me say that on television, I don't have creative control. So I can't change what's there. But
Yeah.
people are shocked when we work and I send them back. I try to be very gentle and I'll send them back a link that'll say psychokinesis. Do you see yourself in this scenario at all? Because it's more times than not a projection of energy many times.
And believe me, we check over and over again. We check everything to make sure. It's not like we say, no, there's nothing there.
But they don't expect that from me because of what they see on television. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is that they see something on television and they're assuming this is the way things are done. Like, don't realize there's a lot of theatrics behind a lot of that.
Oh, 100%. Daryl and I just did an episode actually on our podcast about ghost hunting shows, because both Daryl and I have worked with networks, and the one important message that we try and pass along is that if you watch those shows, which I don't, but if you do watch those shows, just have it in mind, like hopefully you're watching it for the entertainment purposes, because a lot of it is nonsense. A lot of it doesn't even make sense. I often hear them speaking.
It's there to sell.
Oh, for sure. We actually have an email from a network because we had this show idea, and we were told that because we're parapsychologists, we would be too scientific, that the viewers don't want to hear that ghosts don't exist, and that you have to have a scare factor. This network wanted a scare factor like every 5 minutes. And so I
never said they don't exist.
And so I talked to my producer, and I said, with those kind of guidelines, you either have to do one of two things. You either have to go on there and completely just fake it and do what you're told. And I said, and then after that, you can't even like look your colleagues in the eye after that. Or you need to go down the road of creating a drama show, like a TV series, like not a live show, actual drama, because what
label
the networks
it for entertainment.
Yes, because what the networks want is not realistic, and anyone out there that's a real paranormal investigator that does this stuff knows
it's about
that
ratings.
Yeah,
I've worked with good producers. I still, who took into consideration my thoughts, my feelings on things. And I was always told at the end of the day, it's what's going to sell. All my logical answers did not come into play, but they respected me enough to at least try to reword things. But at the end, you just look at everything that's been spliced and diced. I'm like, I so did not say that like that. So I just stopped doing them.
Yeah. Well, I took a course from Kieran O'Keefe over in the UK. And he kind of summed it up really good. He said he tells his colleagues that when you see me on TV, there's the TV Kieran O'Keefe, but then there's the academic Kieran O'Keefe. So he kind of almost separates himself, or creates like two different personalities. So there's stuff that he'll go on TV and say for TV purposes, but then in the academic world, he's much more critical and logical thinking.
Oh, you have to, because it's hard to undo some of that, which is something like I learned going through. It's great. I'm versed in a lot of things, but I'm also super freaking logical. I'm the first one to go through. I always say, go through the process of elimination and see what you're left with. Then start over.
Yes.
Don't just say, hey, if you're left with that question mark, yay, it means you just get to investigate it further. It still doesn't mean that it's still something, yada, yada, right?
So we're absolutely.
Okay, there's a couple of questions we're going to get through.
Oh, yeah. Alex. Hey, Alex. Just out of curiosity, how many police officers would you say take psychic mediumistic information seriously? I could have answered that one for you.
I would say it's very low. Yeah, it's. I would say it's very low. There would probably be some black humor jokes going around the office about it as well. Um,
Uh,
but
yeah.
you know what? It's hopefully on the investigative team, there's somebody that's got common sense that says, "Hey, someone at the end of the day, whether they're media or not, take that title away. It's a person reporting information about the case. You have to follow up on it. It's not we might
Mm,
follow up on it if it's reported to you. You have to follow up on it. Otherwise,
mm,
it's considered in a homicide investigation what they call a red herring." And you don't
mm.
want red herrings when you go to court. You want your case to be solid. So
It's
you don't
it's
you
the
don't want the
credibility.
defense yeah, you don't want the defense to say, "Did so and so report this to you?" "Yes." "Did you investigate it?" "No." "Why not?" "Well, we didn't take it seriously." "Okay, well then what made you believe this witness or this witness or this witness?" You know what I mean? So it's something
Mm,
that you got to take seriously and you got to follow up.
right.
There's
Yeah.
got to be an open mind on both sides, not just law enforcement, but mediums have to
Mm,
be realistic as well when
right.
they're approaching. Make sure that you contact someone that maybe you know through someone, or ask someone if they know anybody in law enforcement that you can speak to. It doesn't necessarily have to be the police officer at that division. You could be speaking to someone else, who I have done here, where I've spoken to someone who has nothing to do with like another part or another borough, another city, and had them contact law enforcement on my behalf, because then they're giving credibility to you. So that's just a little help for those of you out there that are really gifted and into this and can make a difference. Go
Absolutely.
through the channels. You don't necessarily have to go direct.
There's also two other avenues that can be used as well. One is Crime Stoppers, which is an anonymous program, but
Hmm.
you do give your information. But what happens is there's kind of a middleman basically. So you would give the information to Crime Stoppers. They would have your information in case they need to contact you and get up to date information or ask you follow up questions. Then they contact the police and they just get like a little tip sheet that says what the information is. And then they might say, "Oh, geez, I really wish we had more details about that." Then Crime Stoppers can contact you, and you kind of have a middleman that kind of keeps you separate. And then, of
Hmm.
course, if you talk to a police officer and are not, a material witness or a suspect or anything like that, you can ask for informant privilege, which is pretty much the same thing as Crime Stoppers, except you would work directly with that police officer and their partner, and you're able to provide information anonymously as well,
Mhm.
so that if you're worried about your reputation or name or anything
Mm.
like that as well. So
That's how
there
I
are
work.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
Just
no,
try
and
to
you know what? Even
very
even in my book,
anonymously.
even in my two law enforcement books, and probably this third one as well. Like when people give me stories, a lot of them are still serving members. They don't want their names out there because they know the harassment and ridicule that they may face, and of course, the reputation as well. So I use pseudonyms, and sometimes even have to, change the location because it would be like you said when the body showed up on the shore. If you had mentioned where it's at, people could Google it and piece it all together. So
mm,
if writers have that control to kind of be a little bit creative in how they mask that information.
mhm.
Absolutely. And for the protection of the medium and their family, if it's a criminal case, you want to protect yourself and your family as well when you're giving pertinent information to law enforcement. Not from law enforcement, but maybe the perp,
Well,
you know. So it
absolutely,
depends what case you're working. Yeah.
especially if organized crime is involved, right? Because there's a history there with organized crime, intimidating witnesses and things like that.
Mm.
So obviously, yeah, your safety is paramount.
Oh, even homicide. You have to be careful. Yeah, all of that. I have my laptop encrypted, so there's ways that you have to go around it, but that's another show. Tamara, hello. Tamara asks, what is your favorite investigation you looked into?
Oh, my favorite one. You know what? I kind of like the some of the simple ones because, like for example, I think I might have talked about it on a show with you guys before, but it's an Airbnb that myself and one of my investigators
Mm.
had investigated. Be almost 2 years ago now, but the client had reported that there was muddy boot prints that would just mysteriously appear in the Airbnb, and no matter how many times like she'd scrub it up, she'd come back another day and there'd be these boot prints there. she also used to work out of the Airbnb. And when she was working out of there, she saw a female apparition. And then the third thing was that no matter how many times she would close the curtain to the back door so that somebody can't peek in for privacy reasons, it would always be moved back to the right. So Pierre and I went down, we spent the night there, and we were able to solve one of those three problems. And the problem we solved was the back curtain. So we had set up Nest cameras. And through the course of the evening, what was happening is there was a vent about 2 feet away from the door. When the furnace would kick on, that drape would slowly move over. So if you were in the kitchen, you probably wouldn't notice it with your eye. But because we had filmed it all night and we were able to move the time lapse ahead, you could see it slowly moving across. And we tested it, and it turned out it was, in fact, the vent. So we solved one of three mysteries. Unfortunately, we didn't see the footprints appear, and we didn't see an apparition. But like Michelle said earlier, that gives you, enough grounds to maybe go in and do a second night or a third night.
That's really cool.
So it's a simple investigation. And again, we walked away from there and just told the homeowner that we're not sure if it's haunted because we're not discounting your experiences with the boot prints and the apparition, but we didn't see that. But hey, we did solve one of your mysteries. So I do like that investigation. It's a simple one, but it goes to show you that you got to use your head in these investigations and not go into this thinking
all
it's
the
supernatural
time.
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah,
So
a little bit of skepticism.
Have you done anything where you have had a lot of experiences where you've kind of just gone, okay, yeah, it's there? Because, the parapsychology, that's very, it is very scientific. So, what's that wow factor for you where you just couldn't?
For me, it was
You had to give it to the ghost.
for me, it was when I wrote my first book, The Evil in Exeter case. It was a residential house in Exeter. When I went there, I started to experience stuff pretty much right away. One of the things that I'll never forget is I was in the little boy's bedroom, and I was just doing some kind of house blessing prayers that anybody can do. And it was only me and the homeowner home at the time. The homeowner was downstairs. I was upstairs in the little boy's bedroom, and I could hear the doorknob start to open. So naturally you think that it's probably the homeowner. So I looked towards the door, and I could see the doorknob turning as if somebody was coming in, but then it just kind of stopped. So then I went over and opened the door, and there's absolutely nobody there. And then when I opened the door, I could hear the homeowner still downstairs. So there was no way that it was the homeowner. On top of, fire alarms going off, and only holy water would turn them off. It had a whole array of things that were happening that I 1000% believe that place was haunted for sure. Without a doubt. Even in the book, there's an image when we had the FLIR camera, which is a forward infrared looking camera that captures heat signatures. So we were in the master bedroom, and we had a medium come and do basically like a house clearing. And she had the pie plate in the middle of the bed, which you can see in the image because it's smoking hot because the thermal camera's picking up the heat from the sage and things like that being lit on fire. And all of a sudden, as she's calling the entity over towards her, these dark colored, distorted footprints started to appear across the bed, walked around the pie plate, and was kind of like in front of the medium. And she didn't know any of this was happening because me and the homeowner were on the opposite side of the bed as her, and we just kind of looked at the thermal camera, looked at each other, and all of a sudden, after we saw the footprints appear, she says, I kind of sense that the entity is over here by me. And I was thinking in my head, yeah, no kidding, especially after what we just saw. And I remember she said Michael the Archangel prayer and a couple other prayers, and then she felt like the entity had left the place, and the footprints dissipated off of the thermal imaging at that time as well. And they haven't had any issues in the house since then, since November of 2018. So whatever she did kind of got it out of there, and I haven't heard anything further about that place since. So
Fantastic. What was
Yeah.
the story with that house?
you know what? The house was a new build. There wasn't anything wrong with it. The electrical was good. We checked that out. It did back onto the only interesting thing about it is it backed onto the Veterans Memorial Cemetery, which housed a bunch of bodies from the lad school. Now, the lad school was a like kind of like a mental institution back in the day, and these places were not nice places.
No.
The
If you
asylums, yeah.
if you had somebody with a mental or a physical disability, the families were embarrassed by that. They'd usually dump the person off to this place. They made them do labor because a lot of times these institutions would sell fruits and vegetables to raise money for the institution, things like that. And if you died there, they just kind of dug a hole and fired your body in there. What they did in the lad schools, they ended up moving some of the bodies from where they were on the property over to Veterans Memorial Cemetery, and there's a certain section of that cemetery that's got bodies from the lad school that backs onto the subdivision. But other
Jeez.
than that, it was a new build. There was really,
Mm.
there's no gas causing hallucinations or anything like that. I mean, we
Mm.
caught sounds on recording. We caught video of the fire alarm, so it wasn't hallucinations. I literally ruled everything out, even when the kids were talking about hearing scratching on their walls. I
Mm.
literally went outside as a police officer and a parapsychologist. I'm thinking like, okay, well, let's go check if there's trees brushing against the window. Is there a squirrel,
Mhm.
chipping away, or a mice or a mouse or rats or anything? Nothing. There wasn't anything near where the kids were hearing the scratching.
It's tough with kids because they are the teller of tall tales, but they're usually pretty good with their details when something really frightens them,
Yes,
because
yeah,
they're just still pure of mind in many ways. So I
yeah.
always listen to the kids and just let them just
A-
tell it in their way.
and that's one problem with the paranormal is sometimes you could be in a group of people and only one person or maybe two people witness it.
Mhm.
We had growing adults. This is an interesting residual case that Daryl and I basically collected the story. There's not much you can do with a residual case because you never know when the spirit's going to come back. It's based on environmental factors and things like that. But
Mhm.
basically, a man and his wife had a couple over, and they were in the backyard, and they were having a fire. They were sipping on some drinks, and all of a sudden, the husband sees a female wearing like a olden style white dress, looked like she was coming from church, and there is a church, an old church down the road, walking across his property. So he yells out, he says, "Hey, can I help you?" And they're all kind of looking at him like he's crazy. And they're like, "Do you not see that girl walking through our property?" And the other three people didn't see anything. It was only the husband that had seen this female wearing the white dress walking through his property, and she crossed and disappeared where there was an old bridge. And he showed us where the old bridge was. There was still pegs from it. And she walked across that area before disappearing as if she was still in that time period. And then they had eventually moved the bridge a little bit further to the left. So there was a newer bridge over to the left. But it made sense that the spirit went that way because that's the way she would have went back in her day. And
Wow.
he was the only person that witnessed that out of four people. So it's
Mhm.
possible the kids could hear the scratching and just me and the homeowner couldn't hear it.
Right. Yeah. See, that it wakes me up when kids go through things like that. And you can usually tell pretty quick who, like I say, the teller of tall tales are. And you know what?
Well, well,
And the ones who
I,
are really, really
some
involved.
parapsychological studies have shown that children are more um, receptive to paranormal activity than
Oh yeah,
adults, and
absolutely.
also the Virginia of Perceptual Studies has, shown that children up to the age of 7 usually recall a past life if they've had one, and then for some reason
Yeah.
after age 7, age 8, the memories of that start to
Do you think
deteriorate.
it's
So
puberty? Because that's a big belief in the paranormal as well, that puberty, as well as menopause, actually, like whenever you're going through these huge emotional and physical changes, that you can start to project a lot of energy. I mean, over the many years, I've certainly worked with children and, like I said, women going through menopause. It's that whole emotional upswing, you know, and they
It's
just start.
possible that that's definitely one of the older theories too, with poltergeist and
Yes.
RSPK
Yes.
theories. It used to be the prepubescent female teenager that was causing
We're
this
emotional
activity.
creatures, Elliot. Yeah, we're really emotional twice in our life, apparently, because we
Well,
Oh, I
just
we
couldn't
know.
don't
do it
know
good
if
enough the first
if
time.
midlife crisis in men causes anything because they
No.
never come forward, so we can't say it doesn't.
Yeah.
No, it's true, and I mean there have been cases of
Yeah.
only men being involved in poltergeist type activity as well, but
Mm.
Yeah.
it does seem to be concentrated around females mostly,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
which is
Yes.
interesting, and like you said, it could be a biological thing. That's the fun and fascinating thing about parapsychology. There's still a lot of stuff we don't know,
Yeah.
No,
and
I
it's
think
exciting.
Enfield's a good example of that.
Enfield.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Enfield
Yeah.
was another one that again involved a young female.
Yeah.
There was a little
Mm.
bit of hoaxing going on the girl's part, but not all of it.
But
Mm.
she do that so that everybody would leave because the spirits told her that if she told the story that they would hurt her family. That's the way I understood it.
Yeah.
I
That's
know that
why
was I know,
she put up all that trickery because I believe that really did happen. I believe there was a combination of the PK and a spiritual haunting.
I know that was covered off in the movie The Conjuring 2, but
No,
I
I
can't
saw
remember.
it in a documentary.
I was gonna say I
Yeah.
can't remember if it's a real fact or not because the
Yeah.
Conjuring series is definitely my favorite series. So I've seen those movies like 100 times, but
Right.
Yeah, but there's a lot of exaggeration in those.
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
and again, they have to. Even if you look at the Annabelle doll, the real one is a Raggedy Ann doll compared to your
Yes.
Hollywood version, right?
And the
But
haunting of Connecticut's a different story as well.
yes, yeah. But I
Yeah.
do know that the Society for Psychical Research, the majority of investigators that were involved in the Enfield case believe that it was a legitimate poltergeist case. Um,
Absolutely.
there was some that said Guy Playfair and the other investigator there, that they were wrong and things like that. But there was also a lot of jealousy going on who got assigned to the case, and because it was
Mm.
very active at the time and
Yeah,
stuff like
and
that.
things
So
haven't changed.
no, exactly.
Right?
We just talked about that. So,
Yeah.
but for the most part, the Society for Psychical Research thinks it was a legitimate case. So.
I
Mm.
don't know why people fight, like back to the part of the paranormal field and paranormal groups and everything. I don't understand it. It is a great responsibility to work a case, and you shouldn't be fighting for it unless you have what it takes to assist that
Mm.
family.
I don't know if people become like territorial because like if they say they get information about a local haunted museum and then another group is coming to investigate it, if they feel like threatened by it or intimidated by it, or people feel like ownership over haunted locations. I'm really not
Too
sure.
many people looking to do shows.
It's
When
so
I used to
silly.
consult on a lot of TV
It,
shows
it
from all
could be,
over
but
the
I
world,
I
and
think
people would be like, "I want in, I want in." I'm just like,
I think the pendulum with paranormal shows is swinging though. I have been
"Oh,
reading recently
here's
that
to
a lot
hoping."
of ones have been canceled recently, and the networks are starting to move away from paranormal shows and moving on to something else. So I think we're going to see a shift in that for
I think
sure.
you're
But
seeing a lot of ufology on TV right now.
Well,
yeah,
I think that's the next thing. Only because of all the disclosures and everything out with the United States, it's becoming a thing now. But I think with paranormal television, it's played its course, and I probably have a lot of producers that know me right now going, "What are you saying?" But it's true. I think it has. We've been doing this since the 80s, 70s
well,
in some cases. I always
well,
call it the Ghostbuster syndrome, right?
well,
The
I
cycle.
know they're getting tired of the reenactments for sure. We were
Ugh.
told that
Yeah.
they were getting tired of doing the
Well,
reenactments.
the
They're getting
quality's gone downhill too with those CGIs are ridiculous. Some of them.
And they're getting tired of the interview, like the sit in the front of the camera and tell your story kind of
The
thing. They want
formula is
something
Oh,
overkill.
different.
It's
see,
all
I
been
like
done
when the
too many
families.
times.
I
Yeah.
love when the families tell their stories. Those are my favorite shows.
Well,
Like a
well, when
haunting. I love that full half hour.
when Daryl and I were going through which shows we liked, a lot of them were actually some of the original shows. We really
Yeah.
liked how Unsolved Mysteries told their paranormal stories. We really
Yes.
liked how Sightings told their paranormal stories. And
Mm. Mine
uh,
was always Scariest Places on Earth, going back to like
Yeah.
70s, 80s.
yeah, that was another one.
I like The
And
Haunting.
It's just
it was
different.
around, I think when Daryl and I did the timeline, it was around 2000 when things started to change. That's when you started to, and apparently it started with MTV Fear when I did my research.
Mm.
That was kind of
Yeah.
the first reality show that started to get what you have today with your ghost adventures and all that stuff.
I'm
Mm.
tired of the celebrities on the ghost shows, to be honest. I'm like,
Yeah,
you guys have hit every market. Leave something for real people, you know? I really love Unsolved Mysteries. I think that it's just the time that I grew up. And what I loved about Unsolved Mysteries was the combination of crime and paranormal in the same episode. Like it was just
that's
awesome
what hooked
to have
me.
different stories. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely what hooked me. That and then how I got into investigating was later on in 1997. The show had come out in 1993, but in 97 I came across it and it was X-Files because I thought it was
Yes.
really
Love X-Files.
fascinating that you had two law enforcement officers investigating the paranormal because
Mm.
I wanted to become a police officer and I was investigating the paranormal at that time. So I thought that was really cool and that's kind of what got me into
Mhm.
starting to
There's some
investigate.
great stories on X-Files. Their
I love
movies
anything
are
that
even
has a
better
little
than
bit
the
of
episodes.
anything with history involved. Hence, In Search Of was also the old
Yeah.
one with Leonard Nimoy is the one I enjoyed.
Yes, I
I
like that
wasn't a
one
fan
too.
of the remake.
That one was on our list actually as one that we liked
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I watched the episode again. That's before my time. I laughed because I
I
was
have
born
to
in
say it wasn't before mine.
I was
Yeah.
born in 1983, so I said, "Daryl, you probably heard of this," and he
Yeah.
laughed. But I watched the Bermuda Triangle episode that they did on that show, and it
That's
was
not bad.
great.
Yeah.
You know, they had
Wonder.
interviews from like air traffic control people that were
Mhm.
saw planes go missing, from Navy personnel that saw ships
Yep.
go missing, and then at the end of it, like Leonard Nimoy was fairly unbiased. He just said, obviously you just heard a bunch of strange cases from here. There's something going on. This needs further scientific
Yeah.
investigation. And you
Yeah.
know, there
Yeah.
was nothing wrong with that. They weren't exaggerating anything. They were just laying out a story and had witnesses to back it up. And I thought it was
Mm.
really, really well done.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that show.
I love that. I do believe that there should always be a good degree of history. You should always look at the geography of an area just to see if there's something going on underground as well that could cause different anomalies to happen. I think the science behind it. Anytime I've ever taught anything, I used to just used to do little groups like a Castle. I used to bring them into all their school groups, and I used to do them for the occasional school for a fun thing. And it was always something that people were surprised, especially the kids. I say you have to love science and you have to love history. They're like, what does that have to do with paranormal? Everything.
Yeah.
These
And
kids
it's fun.
are.
And
Like,
it's funny
what?
because those were topics that I was interested in. You know, I like the
Yeah.
especially ancient Egyptian history, and that
Yeah.
they've got a lot of like you know,
Yes.
supernatural kind of beliefs and gods and things like that.
Night,
Um,
Alex.
All the old worlds. Good night,
one of the
Alex.
one of the newer shows that both Daryl and I agreed with that wasn't too bad. I don't know if you guys remember it. It was the host of it was kind of my American counterpart, Ben Hansen, who was an FBI agent,
Yeah, I've
and
seen it.
they did
Yeah.
Fact or Fake Paranormal Files.
Yeah, that's
Reason
right.
why I like this one is because usually it would show them sitting in their office with their team.
Mhm.
They would discuss like maybe 6 cases, and they would pick like 2 or 3 that they were
Mhm.
gonna kind of investigate. But they would
Yeah.
do like kind of science experiments to see if they could like
I've seen it. Yes,
replicate it.
it was a great series.
And it was really good. And one criticism about it was hilarious because Daryl and I were laughing. It said that they found that the characters on the show weren't really like made for TV, but they weren't there for TV. They were there for because of their
Ryder was
background and
like
their
off of Destination. True, she was a hoot.
they were there for
Or
like their
Expedition Unknown.
expertise.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
was really good.
Yeah.
yeah.
Can't remember her name.
They didn't like the fact that they didn't kind of ooze actor, I guess, kind of thing. And I know it didn't last too long, but I
you
thought it
don't
was a better
you
show.
don't want that. But I mean, it's sad
No.
because you have to have some sort of a television presence. But when you're bringing on people, everyday people to tell their stories, there's not always a television presence. Like I think people, this is one of the things I'm saying, with the perspective is you have to look at somebody for their expertise or for what it is they bring to the table, not because you're sitting there going, Price is Right. It's just like
But what do
we got it
producers ask?
wrong.
What do
I guess.
producers ask when you're doing a show? The first thing they ask you for is a reel because they want to see how you read on camera. Hi, Corinne.
Yeah, I never had to do any of that. I was fortunate
I
that
had
way.
to do it for the one that you got me, my
Yeah,
paranormal
nightmare,
nightmare. I
yeah.
had to do it for him. He said, tell me about yourself and film it and send it, because they had to see
because
how
you've
you.
never done it. They just
No.
but that's having a good relationship with a producer. Anybody I would send they would use, but which was great. They just needed to see what you were all about, and of course you passed.
I didn't think I would, because I would only been working with Michelle for 3 months. They're like, how many years have you been doing this? 3 months.
No, but you're so cute, Bubbles.
Oh, thanks.
That's all it takes.
Well, Ricardo loved my voice, so I think that was my in.
But let's do a quick station sponsor ID, so then we can just continue on.
Absolutely. Already. Oh my gosh.
I know.
Already. Wow. And what a crazy week. Anyways, it's only Wednesday, guys. You're listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 105.3 and 107.7 FM radio. We are live and archived on Roku as well. Our guest tonight is our friend Elliott Van Dusen, all the way from the East Coast. And tonight he's talking about the Halifax Paranormal Symposium that he's a host of, that's coming in October of this year. If you're interested in being a vendor, there's still places available. It's ppri.net/vendors. Just in case you're interested, there's a few spots left. So go online and give them a check and hand in your information. Just follow the cues. If you're just tuning in, no worries. You can stream our archives on any platform you normally use. There's 250 of them. But anyways, don't forget to share us with your friends as well. A huge thank you to the amazing people at Folgers Coffee for sponsoring our show. We love these guys. We wouldn't be here without them. Thank you. And also a thank you to Sorry, let me do that one more time. Shout out and thank you for our intro and outro to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon Justin Snicker, award-winning composer and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp, and check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Now, if you are listening to us on Facebook or YouTube, I am tongue-tied tonight. Make sure to give us a like, a subscribe, and don't forget to share us. Otherwise, we'll send Tamara after you.
Yeah. Tamara takes it very seriously. Look at this. Here we go. So, that's that. So, but okay. So we'll get back on track now. So, getting into obviously the paranormal, getting into parapsychology. What I don't know how to word it. What makes you do you find when you go into, because there's similarities between the two. Some people will tell you parapsychology has never really proven anything, and we know the paranormal really hasn't. So I guess there is a little bit of a similarity.
It's actually funny you mention that. So I know a lot of people have started using ChatGPT. So I was like, what's the fuss about this, right? So I popped on there and I had asked it a question. I said to it, ChatGPT, can you provide me with a scientific study that showed, ESP exists? And it wrote back saying basically that there's no such studies and all this stuff, and this huge paragraph basically debunking the paranormal. So then I wrote back and I said, well, what about the Pierce Pratt study at Duke University? And then it wrote back to me, and I have the screenshots. It actually apologized. It said, I'm sorry about my previous response. Yes, the Pierce Pratt study showed significant statistical value that ESP exists no matter what the distance is, and that they were able to read the target 20 feet away and things like that. And I was like, wow, I was like, I'm actually smarter than artificial intelligence for once. But yeah, it was really, really interesting because I like, that's what I do. I read the journals. I've got the Journal of Parapsychology sitting here on my desk, and I got a
Right.
subscription to that and the Society for Psycho Research. So I read all that stuff. So I was really surprised when I asked it for, good studies, that it had no results, when I knew that that was to the contrary. So um,
Right. Right.
yeah, got to be careful out there. You got to research everything.
That, yeah, you do. You do. What would you classify like the skull experiment? Would you put that under parapsychology?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would. And the skull experiment actually is another experiment that had a lot of evidence to um, kind of support the paranormal, I guess, is a way to put it.
Yeah.
There's a
But
documentary you can.
parapsychology too, like it was really strange, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, see, so parapsychology is the scientific study. It's considered a social science, first off. A lot of people think
Mm,
it's a pseudoscience, and
mm,
Wikipedia still calls it a pseudoscience. That's why the Society for Psychical Research has created the Psi Encyclopedia, because I know people in the
mm,
academic world that have tried to go on as editors to Wikipedia, and they
mhm.
will put down proper known information, and then the super editors of Wikipedia will go back and change it to that it's pseudoscience and this and that. So
Yeah.
the Society for Psychical Research has decided to create its own encyclopedia. So if you go to their website, you can view the Psi Encyclopedia, which has
Mm,
more accurate information than Wikipedia when it relates to the paranormal.
mm.
Um, but it's scientific study. It's considered a social science of extrasensory perception, mind matter interaction or psychokinesis, and survival. And of course,
Right.
survival encompasses a whole lot: OBEs, NDEs,
Yes.
ghosts, apparitions, the poltergeists, and all that stuff would fall under your psychokinesis,
Yeah.
and telepathy, clairvoyance, mediumship. All that stuff would fall under your extrasensory perception.
Mhm.
So the skull experiment really focused on a lot of that stuff because they were doing seances and speaking with spirits. They had objects basically apport or appear
Yes.
in front of them, which is quite
Yes.
wild. There's a video on YouTube, the skull experiment. You can still watch it. It's kind of grainy because it was obviously filmed very long ago
Long
before
time ago.
your
Yeah.
4K high def stuff. But the
Mhm.
skull experiment is actually one of the better kind of experiments that kind of have proof of an
Mhm.
afterlife.
I find a lot of really great experiments came out of the UK. Like they were sort of pioneers. I say the paranormal, but their society really was more scientifically, researched as opposed to just jumping on like paranormal. Just I think at the time was more of a buzzword.
Yeah, and so what happens is, like, people when they hear parapsychology, they like they go from parapsychology to paranormal, and
Yeah.
then paranormal kind of encompasses everything, right? Your
Yes.
UFOs and your cryptozoology and things like that. But strict parapsychology is just ESP, psychokinesis, and survival.
Right. Right.
I was just going to say that you said paranormal covers everything, including ufology. But if you speak to the ufology, they will tell you that it's paranormal and UFOs.
And see, yeah, and I mean everything's kind of, I mean, cryptozoology is like its own kind of field as well, right?
Something.
But
Yes,
that still
Yeah.
gets lumped in with the paranormal.
I
And
know.
actually, UFOs, like if somebody says, UFOs don't have anything to do with parapsychology, I would actually disagree, because you have a lot of people that talk about being abducted or having contact with aliens, and what's one thing that they say the aliens do to communicate? It's all through telepathy. Well,
Yes.
Right.
telepathy falls under parapsychology.
Mhm.
Yes.
So there should be an interest from parapsychologists
Yeah.
in certain aspects of other fields that kind of fall outside of parapsychology.
Did you
Right.
grow up when paranormal was the word? When I was growing up, it was supernatural. It wasn't paranormal didn't come out till years later. It was
Yeah, it
the
was paranormal.
supernatural.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's paranormal in my world as well.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
always okay, maybe it's a Toronto thing. It was always the supernatural. We never said paranormal. We said it's
Now it's like high
supernatural.
strangeness. That
Yeah.
seems to
Yeah,
See, we
be
always said
the new one,
supernatural.
high
and
strangeness.
Guess it's a city thing.
in psychology too, they use the term now transpersonal psychology
Oh
as well,
Oh,
gosh.
which is kind of like
fancy.
spiritual. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
That's the thing about parapsychology too, is the terms are always changing, right?
Hmm.
Over in the UK, when they say poltergeist, it could be um, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or they could also be referring to an intelligent haunting.
That's
But in
not
North
confusing at all.
but in North America, we look at poltergeist. When you hear the term poltergeist, it's not caused by a spirit; it's caused by a living person.
Projection. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Projection of energy. Well, I always say projection of energy, whether it comes from an individual or something otherworldly, many times it ends up being, a projection of energy. And it's crazy because people on the show hear me say it all the time, but people seem to have, it's easier for them to think that there's like demon, or something very malevolent. It's easier to accept. And I think it's, probably religious conditioning, than it is for them to think that, I'm a pretty powerful individual, that I can project this kind of energy. Like we as people, not just that individual, but we as people, we can project. And I always say, can you imagine if everybody positively projected? Like what kind of an amazing situation we would all be on this planet? Probably better than now. So,
Yeah,
you know,
that makes total sense. And what parapsychologists believe is that when the physical body dies and the
mm,
human consciousness moves on, the personality of that
mm,
individual moves on as well. So if
yeah.
you're not such a nice person, right now, when you die, you're probably going to be that same person. So when
Hmm.
you go into a house where people are reporting kind of malevolent behavior, you
Mm,
really got to kind of think to yourself, like, instead of jumping into the religious aspect that it's a demon,
yeah.
or if you're Islamic, in the Quran they have jinns, which is equivalent
Yes.
to demons. So before jumping into that, you got to kind of ask yourself, is this just a really nasty person that's trying to make these people's lives living hell? Because you hear different stories. You hear the story of, you smell grandma's baked bread, or
Mm.
Yes.
grandpa's cigar. They're just
Yeah.
popping in to say hi, let you know they're around. You
Yeah.
also have kind of like
Hmm.
mischievous people that like playing jokes on people, might
Yeah.
move your car keys and start to
Yeah.
make you think you're going crazy. And then, of
Mm,
course, you've got your real bad people, like
Yeah.
murderers
Your
that want to
yeah.
mimics.
kill. Yeah, so
Hmm.
it's complex for sure. You definitely got to rule things out before you start bringing into one
I think
unknown with another
your
unknown.
belief system has so much to do with it. I mean, like I say, a lot of it's conditioning, but if that's what you believe, it's what you believe. So
Mhm.
are you manifesting it yourself
Yeah,
just through belief system? Do we manifest that sort of thing ourselves? Or as Joe would say, our producer, a dimensional bleed through.
That's what Cindy said.
Yeah, dimensional bleed through.
speaking
Yeah, exactly.
speaking of projection and bleed through, did you ever find that tape of the BP with your thoughts on it?
Um, yeah. There's two versions of it. There's the forward version, and you don't really catch it. But when I messaged you and I said, okay, I'm looking for it, like, no, I'm on something else right now, but I'll let you know. It's like, good, because I just moved and I have no freaking idea,
That's
because
right.
everything
That's
is on
right.
a tape. But there was one that I found after that. And I did have it because when it was sent to me, when he cleaned it up and did the reverse on it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But I mean, I could send it to you. You can play with it for sure. You know, I've always used to send out my EVPs to people. There was an organization in the U.S. Many years ago, and they would teach people how to do EVPs for free. I said, if you do it for free, I'll send you my EVPs, and you can just pick them, just clean them up, pick them to bits, do whatever it is you want with them. I'll send you guys copies of it, and you can do whatever. So there's all kinds of stuff rolling around out there, because I do believe in paying that forward somehow. I don't think it just does any good just sitting in a file someplace, because I really used to like doing them on tape. I'm funny and weird that way. I don't like
Mm,
bleed throughs. I don't like anything like that. Record on one side, that's it. And
yes.
like digital has its own this different metallic sort of
Yeah.
sound. You know what I mean? Like it's just different. So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm old school that way. Just like I always preferred like video tape, in
No,
one
true.
form or another.
It's true. I always tell people when we talk about paranormal equipment, there's no piece of equipment out there that can detect a ghost, and there's no medical equipment out
Right.
there that can detect human consciousness.
Right.
We don't even know
That we
exactly
know
what
of.
human consciousness is
Yeah.
that we've developed yet. I do believe that at some point we possibly could have technology that could detect that, but I
Mm.
mean, obviously they're working on artificial intelligence, and there's even talk about moving our consciousness into artificial intelligence and
Oh,
robots so we
that's
can live
so
forever.
creepy.
I've heard
There's,
it.
It's
there's
so
I've
freaking
heard it.
no,
creepy.
there's people out there studying and trying to do this. So,
Yes. Especially the great minds. Like, it would have been great if we could have done that with Tesla.
oh, for sure. Oh, yeah, yeah. But I mean, yeah, people are out there. They're researching this kind of stuff, and it could come. But you don't have to spend a lot of money to investigate the paranormal. You don't have to go out and buy all that stuff. If you think back to the original founders of the Society for Psychical Research in 1882, they probably had a pen and ink and a notepad,
Because that's
and
exactly it.
that's about it. Because they really didn't have a bunch of photography equipment, and they certainly didn't have digital recorders.
Honestly,
Certainly
Elliot,
didn't have EMF readers.
I used to do talks based on equipment because I was known for buying all kinds of things for these talks. And I would test them and I would show people, okay, this is what it is. This is what everybody's seeing on TV. Does it
Mhm.
work? Meh. No. Or does it work? Meh, yes. But here's a cheaper variation, especially with these really expensive parabolics. And okay, here's like a Whisper 2000, so you could hear your deaf grandfather can hear you. I found one at a yard sale for like $2, and I think it was like $20 new. I said,
They're
it
amazing.
picks up amazing
They're
stuff.
incredible.
So it was just a matter of just giving people comparisons. Like you don't have to spend all this money. I've got
No.
phenomenal equipment. Don't get me wrong. I have phenomenal equipment. Some of it is pretty amazing, because the technology just got better. Like I had met Frank Sumption. We got communicated before he passed away, and he designed, the newest versions of the telephone to the dead, the ghost box. And a dear friend of mine gave me like hers, which was a Frank's box. And I had one designed for myself besides that, like, by somebody else. And they're interesting pieces of equipment. And he used to say, everybody, he used to send me some of his recordings. I have some of his EVPs that he sent me. And he said, everybody thought I did this to communicate with ghosts. Because I didn't. I did it to communicate with aliens. Hence Tesla, kind of the same idea,
That's really
interesting. So I'm thinking to myself, it just put a spin on things for me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, aliens. It's like, who knew? But he was so far ahead of himself. But the technology, the point I'm trying to make changes, right? So some of it, people are getting really good at making interesting things. And they're doing it in a way where it's not so expensive. So I don't know.
Well, one of the things too with the changing in technology, like you mentioned, was back in the early '90s when orbs were appearing in photos all of a sudden. But what they found out happened is, like with phones and things like that, the flash, and look at where the flash is. The flash is there, and you've got your three cameras right there, right? So when they kind of move things, it refracted the light differently, and it picked up things in the environment differently, such as moisture in the air, dust, pollen, all that stuff. So all of a sudden we went through this. People were going to cemeteries, which they keep freshly cut usually, and taking pictures at night with a flash. And all of a sudden, they're seeing thousands of these orbs, and they think that the cemetery is just loaded with spirits.
Yeah, and sun rays cause that as well. But you know who made this a huge phenomenon? Were all the new moms with their baby cams. That changed all of a sudden. Everybody's baby was having a paranormal experience when they were sleeping, and I can't tell you how many of those emails I got, and I'm like, oh.
I'd say no, it's just from the cotton.
But you break their heart when you tell them. They're like, no, I know it. I told this story about my niece. She took a picture. She was taking a video. It was her father's birthday, and they were singing happy birthday to her. She's my niece by marriage, and she's videotaping. And she said, why is there a light bouncing all over, like only on my kids' heads? And I'm watching it and I
Yeah.
go, oh my gosh, she's singing happy birthday and she's doing this. Happy birthday to her dad. So she was literally, I noticed that the baby, it was her phone. And I said to her, honey, you got your flashlight on. That's what's fallen in front of your children. And she was grateful. But some people, when you say this, they're pissed
Very,
off
very
at
ornery.
you. Like, no, it
Ornery
has
people
to
out
be. I'm
there.
like, no, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be. Like, you'd be
Yeah.
surprised with forced air how much dust when you're picking up something on a digital camera that is so sensitive. Take that with film, with a clean lens, and then we'll talk.
I just sent
You know?
Michelle a picture that I have permission to share from a friend of mine, Jason Murphy. He is co-founder of Haunts from the Cape. So he was at a cemetery which is about 5 minutes from my house
So
called
I can put
Hardwood
these up then?
Hill Cemetery. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. One
And
second. Let
he
me
was
do
there
that.
with just his wife and his kid. But when he took this photograph, they were back towards George Street in the
Okay, so
cemetery. So
this is
George,
it right here, right? Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
So
that's
this was
okay.
the original photograph.
Okay.
And he noticed that there was something kind of dark to the left of that cross there. So when he zoomed in,
Okay. I'm going to get that right now. Can I get the other one?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, 1 second. So we're going to go back again. Share screen.
So he noticed, like, as you can see, the background, like this black thing doesn't really look like it fits there. So when he zoomed in, this is what he sees.
That is
Um,
solid.
So I had sent that photo for analysis because it was taken with a cell phone. It was a digital photograph, and there was nothing altered about it. The pixels matched up, the red, blue, and green all matched up. There was basically, the person that analyzed it said that appears to be a person standing there
A
in the
small
cemetery, if I
child.
had to guess. But Jason, his wife, and his son all say that there was nobody else in the cemetery
That
at
looks
that
like a
time.
small child who maybe perhaps would have been buried there, because that looks like a funeral suit.
Yes, it's all dark. Some people even think that the white might be like some sort of collar shirt, but it's a very interesting photograph because, like I said, we had it analyzed. Even though it's a digital photograph, I still like the 35 millimeter because you can send the film off to the company Kodak or whoever
The
to
negatives, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the negative to analyze it, but everyone's got digital. Digital is what it is. But that there is what I would call like a ghost photo. But I always feel bad, like you said, Amelia, when someone sends you a picture of an orb and they're like, "Oh, my grandmother passed away last week, and this showed up. And what do you think?" You almost feel like so bad to reply.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
So
like you don't want to
usually,
crush their hope.
Yeah, because they're kind of
no,
hoping for that connection, right? And
yeah,
it's
they're hoping that.
heartbreaking.
Yeah, they kind of want, yeah, like, oh, I think this is proof my grandmother's visiting me, and you feel bad being the one to tell them, like, listen, I hate to tell you, but that's not like a ghost photo, and
It's
so
really
I
hard.
usually direct them into
Yeah.
different like sites that explain photography and kind
Mhm.
of show you how that stuff shows up, and
Oh,
then I ask them, like, have you had any sort of activity happen at your house? Usually they say no, and I said, okay, well, if you do have anything happen, like, you can reach back out to us
that's a
and we'll take
good
a
way
look.
to handle it. I think that's really, really
It's
smart.
I
And
know, I feel
also,
bad. I don't want to be like Daryl. Daryl would just be like the hard guy that's like, don't even send me that garbage. But
oh, I'm
Jeez,
not
yeah,
that harsh.
yeah.
I'm not that harsh.
no, I
No,
kind of
I
no.
got a soft heart, so
well,
I do it politically.
I had to send someone a link to Understanding White Light, because they said, well, they're different colors. I'm like, oh, it's light refraction. It's the reflection of the white light bouncing off of the dust. But you can't, that's where science comes in
Hmm.
this, when you're trying to, not, I hate the word debunk, but prove that no, this is just a
It's
natural
the
occurrence that's
process of
happening.
elimination. I
Yeah.
mean, we've got hours of videos, throughout with the old security cameras at the other house, which was haunted. I mean, it was empty for about 4 or 5 months. So we kept cameras on, and it was boiler system, no forced air, nobody walking around, nothing. And all of a sudden, through the cameras, we get a notification. Like, thing just flying around like this, would go out of the mirrors, go into the mirrors, go up into the chandeliers, fly across the room.
Yeah.
You'd get one, sometimes two, that would do something like this. I'd be just sitting there going, the kids are out. Who let the kids out to play? Nobody's home. But the house is empty for like 4 or 5 months. Just
What's your guys' feelings on photos and videos now? Because I used to do a lecture with a photograph of my niece and nephew, and the only thing in the picture that was real was them and the clothes that they were wearing. Everything else was fake. The dock they were sitting on was fake. The lake in front of them was fake. The reflection in the lake was fake. It was all fake. Made for a great family photo, though. But now video has become just as good as those fake pictures. So the
makes our job
paranormal has,
harder, doesn't it?
well, it's almost become seeing is believing now. You almost have to experience it yourself because somebody can just fake something so quick and so easy now.
Good point.
It's everywhere. Technology. I mean, technology's advanced to the point where everything is AI, and there are artists out there using just AI, which sort of, I know right now our network, our producer, is at an awards for writers and illustrators of the future, and they had to specifically say no AI artists because it takes away from people actually doing like real
All that
artwork.
work. Yeah.
And so it's
Oh,
becoming a
yes.
problem even in that field,
Yeah.
let
for
alone
sure.
like our field, which is in our field, both paranormal, parapsychology. It's very difficult to try to, even parapsychology, which is the more credible of the two. It is really difficult to start with, let alone throwing all that into the mix.
I think the future of paranormal investigations is going to be tough when people are just sending you video and photographs now. You almost need to go there
It's already
yourself
tough, yeah.
and experience whatever's
Mm.
happening, because photos and videos are no longer worth 1,000 words
Not
anymore.
once it hits the computer. You can do it the old-fashioned way and hope for the best. You know what I mean? But once it hits the computer and it goes digital, you have all these programs now that can just do anything.
Yeah.
So unless you have something like that negative to prove it, or video tape to prove it, or audio tape, I have to stress tape. So people, you can just say, no, listen to it just the way it was recorded. I think it's going to be really difficult. And maybe it's a good time to phase out, like you say. So many are being phased out of television onto other things. Maybe now's that time, because it's going to be really, really tough.
Well, even the TV shows and the networks would love what's available now, because they could doctor up a fake ghost video, So
They can do it without even an editor because they just come in that way. Social media is full of fake paranormal experiences and many, many believers. It's an imbalance right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like when I'm scrolling through TikTok and watching all the paranormal videos, I do it because I'm killing time or entertainment purposes.
Me too.
Because
Yeah.
I know, like for me to think like, is this real, and start like processing it, like I'm just wasting my time.
Yeah. Just to unwind, you kind of just flip through. It's easy. 30 seconds, you're done.
We should actually do, like, we do the Q&As every now and then. People just love it. They just want it off the cuff and just talk about whatever. But we should always bring you and Daryl on, and we just to do a show with us on a Q&A, just to talk about stuff like that.
That'd be fun. The four of us together. I think that would be a crazy show. I have one more project.
Let's set it up though, but you have to say, you have to be nice because your people are nice people. We have a lot of good people in chat.
I will. I'll talk to Daryl tomorrow, and we'll set something up. One other project that I'm working on, since tonight we talked a lot about a divide in the paranormal community, but one project that I will be working on, I just did a podcast on a show called Paranormal Stakeout with Larry Lawson. He's a former police officer, and we got along really, really well. And he asked me if I would be interested in helping him start up kind of like an international law enforcement paranormal investigators association, so that we could kind of like get all those paranormal investigators out there that are in law enforcement. I know there's one group called COPS. It's like a
I was just going
correctional.
to say, are you including Wes Coleman? He's a good
Yeah.
friend of mine. Are you
Yeah,
including
yeah.
him in that?
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
Wes is on my Facebook, and I know he
Yeah,
runs
he's a good
COPS.
guy.
And
He's a
so
really good guy.
we're talking about creating like this kind of like law enforcement organization where you're retired or current that you
Yeah.
could join through a membership program, and we'll have membership fees, and hopefully get people like we'll have money that maybe you can apply for if there's a certain course or a workshop that you want to go to. Maybe the association will have money to kind of pay for some of it, or
That'd be
hopefully
great.
all of it.
Yeah.
And it'll kind of bring some connectedness together. It'll bring
Yeah.
both people with law enforcement experience and paranormal experience together, and
Mhm.
kind of make that network really tight. So that's something that we're actually having a meeting tomorrow about it, to kind of see what else we can do and
I think
kind
it's
of
a great
develop on
idea
it.
because you have to get away from the stereotypical stuff. You have to do something like really different. I mean, it's a breath of fresh air, but it's unfortunate that you have to. You know
I
what I
think it'll
mean?
help bring retired cops forward too.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
when
it'll be good. And like I know Rob McConnell, for example, that does the X Zone. Like he's a retired police officer as well.
Yeah, he's
So
got a
there's
great show. Yeah.
Wes Coleman, like you just mentioned, myself, Larry Lawson. So yeah, we're looking at doing that, and hopefully kind of creating like a tight bond. And it's just one example of trying to bring parts of the paranormal community together.
Mm.
So instead of
Mhm.
being
Mhm.
divided.
Well, we'd like to hear all about that when you guys get it all up and running, because honestly, like I say, it's sad that the community is in such a different direction that you have to come up with something totally fresh.
Yeah. No,
You know?
I know,
Yeah.
and we want to hopefully as time goes on, like I'm still working on developing some online courses and things like that. So hopefully, like we can kind of, if you're part of that association, you could maybe get a discount to take the course or stuff like
Mhm.
that. Just we're gonna really try and sit down and work out some details on it, but it is in the making. So if
Mhm.
any of your listeners are law enforcement, either current or prior, and I'm talking border patrol, security guard, loss prevention officer, anything with public
Oh,
safety, send
yeah.
us an email, info@ppri.net, just so I have your name and your email, and then that way when things get going, if you're interested or it's something that you might be interested in, we can reach out to you.
Oh, Cindy Summer, if you're still listening, check that out. She's a former sheriff from California.
Very nice.
Chris
Yeah, one
Phoenix
more
says,
question.
I have a question. What impact did Helena Blavatsky have on the
Blavatsky, yeah.
Paranormal Society?
Yeah.
That's a great question, girls, and I don't even know who that is.
I don't either.
Sorry,
She
Chris.
she
Yeah.
didn't impact me any, obviously.
I don't know who she is either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
sure. I have never heard that name before. I will do some research though and look into it for sure.
Yeah, wow. I can't believe we're slowly heading up to the top of the hour. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to put the banners up again. And we'll start with this one right here. So this is coming up. And we spoke at the beginning of the show about maybe bringing the guests on. Obviously, you and Daryl will do it together, because that'll just be like the four of us having a parlay. And we're going to see how that's going to go. I don't
Wow,
know.
that'll be fun actually. I think that'll be a really funny and cool episode.
I think
That's
so.
Thanksgiving weekend, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is Thanksgiving
So
weekend.
you
If you're
have the long
looking,
weekend. If you're interested in going, you don't have to worry about Sunday because you have 2 days off after that. So go and have fun.
Exactly.
yeah, and
Exactly.
again, it's from 9 to 6. It is a full day. There's breaks in there, obviously coffee, tea, and of course lunch. Tickets are selling for sure. We're getting lots of notifications that tickets are selling. So
And you're looking for
ppri.net.
vendors as well? Yes.
Yes, vendors, sponsors. I will email you as well to see
Okay.
if there's
Yeah,
anything you guys can do.
absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's like I said,
There you
this
go.
is where I mean, I'm passionate about the paranormal, so I mean, like and I wanted to host something like this because I'm so passionate about the paranormal. So this is kind of like my baby I'm working on this year, but I really want it to be successful because I like to have it be a reoccurring annual thing and get different speakers. Like already next year, I'm thinking if this one is really good and we did a 2-day one next year, we could have kind of like a skeptics and a believers theme. So you can get some like more of your critical parapsychologists or critical paranormal investigators. And then you can
Mm.
get your like real true believers and kind of have like maybe like a little bit of battle about debate and things like that. And I think that would be really cool. There's all kinds of different things you can do in the future, but we want to get through. We want to get through this one, and I'm hoping that it's successful. I mean, we brought in 2 international speakers here: Richard Gallagher, Lauren Coleman.
Mhm.
Both very interesting topics: demonology, cryptozoology, and
Right.
then you've
Right.
got a whole range of
Right.
topics here with Chris Stiles and UFOs, Daryl
Absolutely.
with ghosts, Richard
Yes.
Gallagher with demons, Lauren Coleman with cryptozoology, and
Mhm.
Kim Moster with hauntings. So I think it's gonna be really good. There's a lot of interest in it. So
Well, I think it's great. I think, like I said, I love the idea of just bringing them back on individually as well, and we can put up this, the banners like this, and we just keep going throughout the summer, and it's I think we just keep the interest going and people wanting to come out, and it'll give people a little glimpse into who everyone is, and then they get to go and see them in person, which would be a really big deal. So
absolutely, I will take care of that tomorrow.
excellent, excellent. And we'll start with you and Daryl. Just because
Yeah.
now I can't freaking wait. Yes.
I one question because I've been meaning to ask you through the whole show out of curiosity. I don't know why, but I've always had an interest in the Titanic, but of late it's been really insane. I am It's like finding me everywhere, television, social media, everywhere. Did you ever go to the cemetery?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, how was
I've
that for
seen.
you?
Um, I thought it was. I thought it was really cool. I didn't like experience anything. I'm not like, like I I do have like really good intuition, obviously, like, but I didn't feel anything spiritual. But it was really cool. Obviously, there's lots of bodies buried in Halifax from the Titanic, and I saw the grave. It says J. Dawson on it. That's what everyone thought, where they got the name
It's
Jack
Jack.
Dawson from the movie
Yeah,
Titanic.
Right.
it
But
was
there
it
was
was
a J.
coincident. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a J. Dawson tombstone there
Yeah.
from the Titanic in Halifax.
Yeah.
Also, the Five Fishermen restaurant, which I believe Brad that listens to your show, Bradley Monks,
Yeah, he's
wants
a
to go
friend.
eat at.
Yeah.
It is a very haunted restaurant because it used to be Snow's funeral home, and
Yeah.
it's housed bodies from not only the Titanic but also the Halifax explosion. And
Yes.
it's a very nice high end seafood restaurant. So very haunted. So I think anyone that goes there will have a great time. And of course, the Maritime Museum of Atlantic in Halifax, which is also haunted, has artifacts from the Titanic. I've seen a deck chair from the Titanic, and now that was really cool because you're just staring at this stuff and you've heard so much about the Titanic, you've read it in books, you've learned about it in school, and it was just really cool to see real stuff from the Titanic. Like there was a deck chair, there was some silverware, stuff that
Yeah.
they've recovered, and it's just really, really awesome.
Wow. That's awesome. I love
You
that.
guys, you guys should come to Halifax.
You
I
never
want to
know.
come so badly because my parents, my family actually came into Halifax before coming to Toronto on the ships, right, from
So
Italy.
so
So
you'd want to go to Pier
Pier
21.
21.
They
I
do
have
Reese.
all the information and the photographs of the ships and my
Oh, you
mom
do?
and my brother. Yeah, but I'd like to go in person and
I was
see
going
the
to say
books.
they help people research that stuff there too. So
My
yeah, you
family
got,
is really easy to research. My dad's family built Pisa, so it's like all over the place. But my mom's family, I would like to find because I know some of them came there and then went on to New York.
yeah,
So
Mm.
it'd be interesting.
you
Halifax
got
was Pier
you guys should
21
come.
was, yeah, it's
You
a
never
beautiful
know who
place. You're
might
so
just
lucky.
show up.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list, but in my early bucket list that I really want to come there because I just love the East Coast. I think it's just so beautiful. It's so
I have
reminiscent
so
of
many
Europe.
friends in Halifax, honest, or
Yeah,
in Nova Scotia, really. And
I
Nova
don't have
Scotia's got
anybody.
great, really great antique furniture.
Oh
Yeah, no,
yes.
that
Oh
I just
yes.
want to. I
Delicious.
want the seafood and I want the
Yes,
history, and I
all of
really want
it.
to walk through Pure
all of
21
it.
and take the steps that my parents and my brother took. So
And with that
that's
being
really
said, we're at
important.
the top of the hour,
Yes.
Bubbles.
Yes, sorry. Sorry.
But anyway, Elliott, thank you for joining
problem.
us. It's
Thank you for having
always
me. I
such.
do appreciate it.
Thank
Oh,
you.
are you kidding? We love
fun.
having you on. We love having you on. You always have an open door policy with us, and we're really happy to offer a platform to be able to advertise this amazing event. And we're looking forward to just kind of stretching it out and getting the word out. And I'm definitely interested in
important.
getting some information on sponsorship so the radio show can sponsor you guys as well.
Awesome.
It's a very important event.
It is. This is
Yes.
great. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. So
Well, yeah,
thank
because
you.
you always hear about conferences down the States, right? So it's nice to kind of get something with Canadian content. as well.
Ours.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And believe
It's
me, there's
ours.
lots of it. So
That's right.
yeah,
That's
we need
right.
that.
So
This is a necessity, and I hope it endures time for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
yes, one of many. So I'm going to be in touch with you, and I will wait to also, have you get all that info to me, and let's make things happen.
Sounds great.
All right. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Good night now.
Thank you, Elliott.
Night.
Good night.
Good
Well, it's
night.
already Thursday there.
Yes. Yes, true. Thank you.
You're
Good
welcome.
night, Elliott. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Well, guys, we've come to the end of another amazing segment, and I mean amazing segment. So big thank you to Elliott Van Dusen, who's just a champion, so well versed and putting together this amazing event, which the lineup itself is just awesome. You guys aren't familiar with Chris Stiles, just go in and see a couple of our archives with Chris Stiles. He's done 2 or 3 shows, and we will bring him back on, and he's just a real delight to listen to.
Yes.
Super versed. So
Yes.
big thank you to Folgers Coffee, of course, for sponsoring tonight's show. Big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon. Big thank you to Steve McGinnis. If you guys really dig what you're listening to, please go in and support us by subscribing, liking, sharing, following, you name it. We would appreciate if you did it. Also, coming tomorrow for the very first time, we've got Rebecca Pittman, who has authored several books on Salem, the Stanley Hotel, Murder's Plantation, Lizzie Borden, the Length Mansion, and the Palace of Versailles. But tomorrow night, it will be Salem and the witch trials, and she's sent over a bunch of photographs here that we're going to be showing, and she's just a delight, and again, very well versed. So tune in so you don't miss it. In the meantime, everybody behave, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Good night.